Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Deeper Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Demetrius Colbert. Super excited to have you here with us today. I have somebody here who I have known for, I was calculating today, for about 13, 14 years, somewhere around there. We met in 2011, I believe early 2011, and we were part of the same ministry for several years. And he has, I believe, moved back to where he's originally from or somewhere in that space and things along those lines. And I'm super excited to have Mark Jackson with me, coach extraordinaire Mark Jackson with me here today. And what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about life coaching. And so the reason why I wanted to have Mark on here today is because there has been a great move of people now. Almost you see it everywhere. I'm a coach. I'm a coach. You see advertisements on social media, whatever the social media may be. You're going to see somebody advertising. You want to coach this. You want to coach that. I wanted you to have a conversation with two people that are actually certified life coaches that do life coaching on a regular basis, and that this is where we live. But the reason why I reached out to Mark is because Mark has been consistent and faithful from the moment I saw him jump into this. He's just been consistent and doing the same thing over and over and over again. And you'll get a chance to connect with his social media today. And what you're going to see is that he's going all over the place. He's taking pictures with people from various different places, doing various different things that might be emblematic of the clock that he has behind him, or the clocks, I should say, of the places where he's been. He's traveled different things along those lines. But without further ado, I want you guys to help me welcome Coach Mark Jackson to the Deeper Podcast. Mark, so good to have you, man. Thank you so much for being with us today.
And it's my pleasure. I don't know if I'll stop smiling at any point in this process for two reasons. Number one, coaching, and you and I will get into it. But number two, man, my admiration of you and something that I think is about 13 years overdue because we tried to connect and then our
Yeah,
ministry lives went a couple different ways. And
sure.
I think we both just watched each other with admiration and
Yeah,
prayer and support from
for
afar.
sure. For sure.
And yeah, so this is kind of like a fulfillment moment for me to be sitting here with you, man.
For sure. Well, thank you so much. I feel the same way. Again, you can see Mark is incredibly genuine. That's the other thing I want to do. I want to have people on here that I believe are going to help you and that have a genuine heart. Both of us share a common faith. So for those of you who might run across this on Spotify or on YouTube, we're believers. So we're children of God. We believe in God. And so that's the foundation of everything that we do. We're never without that, no matter what information we are sharing with you. And again, Mark is just a profound man, and that is the reason why I wanted him to be on here. Man of character and integrity. And so I'm equally as honored to have him with us today. So we're going to jump into this, Mark, and just kind of, man, give people a little bit of some insight and give us your perspective, give us a global perspective, a local perspective, whichever way you want to go with it. But before I get into the specific questions, I'm just curious. There'll be some people who say, well, what's the difference between going to counseling and coaching? How would you answer that particular question for people? Because I know that's a
Yeah,
a high um, percentage question.
yeah, absolutely. The best way I can answer that is that coach or counseling and therapy are very essential in our world, but they're generally centered around helping people look backwards and dig deeper to address issues. The whole process and principles of coaching help people look forward and go higher to reach goals. And so, just like my arms here, they could not be any more different. One is backwards and deep, the other one is forward and high. So, coaching is perfect for people. Now, I pray that there's enough therapists and counselors out there who will recognize, okay, me and this person have been around these
Mm-hmm.
issues and there's nothing else to extract,
Mm-hmm.
nothing else to address. and to say to their client, how would you like to go forward now? Let me refer you to a life coach. And a great life coach will not step outside of their discipline and start counseling, therapizing. They will say to a person, hey, I know you want to go forward. Seems to be that this thing that we've talked about a few times is holding you back. Let me refer you to a counselor or therapist so you can address that on a deeper level. Once you do, let's get back together and start moving toward this goal. And that's essential. Now, you and I are
Right,
we're pastoral, we
right,
have elements of pastoral counseling in.
right.
So most of the people that work with us or people like us will get a blend. But even when we do discuss and talk about that back then
Yeah.
and issue, it's only in connection with how we're going to get beyond it so that we can move forward, so that you, the client, can move forward and experience what you really want.
Awesome. I'm trying to figure out how I want to frame this next one. So Mark, so again, you made mention of the fact that we have that pastoral gifting in us. That's the way we do. So people are going to get a blame. So I do want people to know that, right? Because people have asked me before. They're like, "So are you a pastor or are you a coach?" And I said, "Listen, those things just run through me. So they just are what they are." But how? So here's a question a lot of people might want to know. I get asked this question a lot, but I'd love to get your response on it. This forward type of thinking. Like, so you got certified, you went, you got trained. What was the impetus, if you will, Mark, for you saying, well, this is what I want to do because I see the value in this, and then I'll add my little 2 cents afterwards.
Yeah. Um, well, at that time in my life, I was doing a lot of pastoral counseling for my church, as well as serving people coming out of incarceration, people coming out of career transition looking for their next. And I'm by nature a radical encourager,
Mhm.
very motivational, if you will, very supportive. And I decided I want better tools than just my encouragement and my motivation. So that was the impetus to becoming certified. And what I didn't realize at the time was how much. So to say what I'm about to say, I need to insert this.
Sure.
My two favorite things about my certification, number one, is that it's Bible based transformational life coaching. It's not religious, it's not slanted towards getting people to believe a certain way. It's just applying biblical principles as you coach people forward. Whether they're a believer or not, the principles applied can help people. And the ultimate help is, the faith that can arise. It's not a motivation of mine or a goal. I'm not trying to coach this person and then, evangelize them or anything like that. But the principles are there. And because of what you and I know, that people are created in his image and likeness, these principles are very applicable. So that's my
Hmm.
favorite thing. That is everything's Bible based.
Yeah.
My second favorite thing is not even one and two, it's like one and 1A.
Okay.
They wouldn't teach me a thing
Mm.
about coaching another person on this planet until after 6 weeks working on this guy.
Yeah.
And I had no idea how much
Yeah.
I needed it. And it literally unlocked my life like I didn't know was needed. And it's really the only reason I'm talking to you today. So I say that to say, I just got it for that reason.
Yeah.
In the way I started serving and helping people in those two arenas, pastoral, counsel coaching with people, and working in the nonprofit, helping people in career and life transition, returning citizens, changed dramatically because I could apply sound coaching principles that were very transformative for me first and then for them.
I love that. And I appreciate you sharing that. I'm gonna add to that. I'm going to co-sign for that. Pastoring people, planning two churches, then working for the church for the better part of about 30 years total was interesting because, like you, I realized there is another way to also facilitate developing people as opposed to just Sunday and Wednesday for me. So I realized that they were attending, showing up, but then some of the questions that I would get during council time, right? Or a phone call, or even at the end of service at the door, there was somebody be like, hey, I heard what you said here, but I still got this going on. So it wasn't that the message wasn't well, it was that they lacked the ability to move forward with what they had. So they didn't know the framework. So what does that look like, right? For me to be able to take what I just heard and then apply it in my life and be able to propel my life, like you said, right? To be able
Yeah.
to propel my life higher and forward, right? And so that for me was a large part of it because as a pastor, I began to get frustrated with people who would come up after service. And when I say frustrated, it wasn't as if I was like, get yourself together. It was more of a like, hey, like what's missing here? Like, how do I take what I've said and then help people actually apply it. I love what you said earlier too about the difference, which and we'll maybe touch on that again of between therapy and coaching. And again, because one is digging deep in your past, this other thing is about moving forward. And so I do want to just kind of sidebar for a moment and say to you, if you're listening to this and you're in therapy, we're not telling you to throw your therapist away. What we're telling you is when your therapist, as Mark alluded to, is has felt like you've gone as far as you could go in this space and they've helped you at least come to what might be considered for yourself equal ground, level ground. Now you're saying now it's time for me to launch into the thing that I believe is a dream in me, a purpose in me, a plan in me, a destiny in me, and go in that direction. But I also too did the same thing, Mark, because I said there's got to be something different. And so now when I'm dealing with people, I start with that whole understanding of now I want you to understand this isn't us going into your trauma necessarily and things along those lines. This is about you saying, how do I escape and arrive? I need to escape from where I am here and arrive to where I have always dreamed of and seen myself. And so I wanted that for believers because I felt like they too were stuck in many different ways. And by the way, I work with people, I'm probably sure Mark does too, that don't actually share my faith, but they do, in fact, get the principles because my coaching came through Christian Coaching Now. And that is exactly where I got certified through as well. And so it's all based in these principles and these values that you find in the scripture. So Mark, this is really good. Let me ask you this question. So life coaching involves like setting and achieving goals. You know, what role do structured goals play, and why is it often challenging for people to achieve them on their own?
Well, I, I think I don't know if you're going to be bleeping out words here, but you just said a potty word, the word goals.
Yeah.
For many people, that's a word that's provocative or a little bit of a
Mhm.
dirty word because we have, in many cases, an aversion to setting goals. Now, the roots of that are extensive, but ultimately, we kind of convince ourselves to avoid really setting concrete goals
Mhm.
to avoid disappointment.
Mm,
We're afraid to
I like that.
fail. And we have this perception that failure is bad.
Hmm.
Failure is not bad, failure is fuel. Disappointment is fuel. And so when we can change our relationship and recognize that failure in many cases is necessary, that's how we get most. Listen, we're talking because of my failures, sir, and every good thing that can be extracted not just for my successes,
Yeah.
but the miserable failures that I was experiencing. That's why I talked about those 6 weeks I didn't even know I needed. So when people even start thinking about setting goals, they need help overcoming that initial aversion,
Yes.
and they need help recognizing setting this goal is the ultimate evidence that I want something.
Love it.
And,
Love
and
it.
many times we are afraid to want. And eh, culturally, you talk about ethnic culture, you talk about religious culture, however you want to frame culturally, we can even get this sense, even some of our status quo paradigms, I don't deserve, or that my entire existence, everybody's entire existence, is just about eking out an existence,
Mm,
just having something to be grateful for and just getting by. You
mm,
and I probably know this, many people know this as surviving
mm.
instead of thriving.
Thriving.
So
Yeah.
setting a goal is proof that you want something. In many cases, it's proof that you know you were made for more. And
Mm.
if you really want chaos to break out in your life, set a goal, because that's when all of the fear, the
Yeah.
limiting beliefs, the false, deep subconscious beliefs that we don't even know
Hmm.
that we
Hmm.
carry will come to the surface, present internal and external obstacles, and work really hard to test how much we want it. And this internal battle is our own life and lifestyle, thinking patterns, emotions say, I just want things to stay the same, even though I want things to be
To
different.
change.
So, so we'll fight harder to stay stuck than we will to get free.
Oh.
And a coach comes alongside to help us raise our self awareness, catch the patterns of our self sabotaging behaviors, our
Mm.
limiting beliefs, and just hold us accountable to what we really want and keep us connected to that future outcome, that state of being. And that helps us move beyond all internal and external obstacles. So, the value of the coach is that person, here's the best way I could describe it, who goes there,
Yeah.
stands in your future success, and
Mm.
helps you move in that direction, and cares about you enough to go, hey, where you going? You're moving backwards. That's a backwards belief. That's a backwards thought process. What's going on here? Okay, now remember who you wanted to be, who you have to be to reach this goal, and what you have to let go of to be that person. Let's get back on track. And to extract the good of going backwards. Why did I go backwards? What circumstances were part of that? What triggered me shrinking back or getting into fear? What was going on so that I can?
Man.
How would I like to respond to that next? I think accountability helps us with that because of our own blind spots and our own habit of creating narratives. We need somebody outside of that world to make us aware of that world so we can step outside. You know this. So someone answers a question or says something, and it's
Hmm.
all right. If you're a coach, listen to me very carefully. Instead of jumping in with a comment or a question, you just hold silence for them. I know this has happened with you, sir. And your client says, I don't, I don't think I've ever said that out loud.
Mm.
Or they'll say, I don't, I didn't even, I can't believe I just said that. Wow. I sound like my mother. I sound like my mentor. I sound like somebody in my life. So they're starting to recognize limiting beliefs and
Mm.
right. So anyway, we just hold that space for their self-awareness to raise. And we're the one that helps them experience light bulb or aha moments and then start catching themselves in the act and redirecting themselves in that forward momentum. And you ask me a question 30 minutes later, I'm still answering it.
No, 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 no. This is why I wanted you here. This is incredibly profound to me. And this is exactly why I wanted you here. I mean, we could literally end this right now with everything that Mark just told you. He dipped into so many different things here. And Mark, I want to ask you some additional questions off of some of the things that you said, which I just thought were profound. And I wrote down, and I'm going to have to steal them. Okay. I just want to let you know I'm going to have to steal some of these quotes. But I
You.
really want you to dive into this for just a moment. There's going to be some people who say, well, what is a limiting belief? So, can you just kind of describe a little bit for people what a limiting belief is?
Yeah. Um, so a limiting belief is an internal belief or value system that is connected to a perceived restriction or inability to dot dot dot
Mm.
to reach a goal, to change a habit, to have some outcome. So Amanda Goldston here in the United States, she researched and found the top 10 limiting beliefs. And most everybody here can recognize them. Now, they're ranked. So believe it or not, the number one limiting belief is the fear of greatness.
Wow.
If you were
I've
about,
never heard that.
yeah, most people think it's the fear of failure. No, it's the fear of greatness. Number two is the fear of not, the order might be a little jumbled here.
No worries.
Fear of not being enough,
Mhm.
not being good enough, not being skinny enough, tall enough, rich enough, the right gender, from the right side of the tracks, smart enough, popular enough. They're all, I am not good enough.
Mm.
Limiting belief. The fear of success, the fear of failure, the fear of not being loved,
Mm.
fear of not belonging, um, perceptions about success and money, assumptions about what it even means to be successful, especially financially. So these are the kinds of limiting beliefs that just lurk beneath the surface. So when this authentic part of me sees me doing something wild in my life, the limiting belief bubbles up to say, that's for somebody, bro, but
Not
not
for
you.
you.
Yeah, you remember you left college, you
Yeah.
dropped high school, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you messed up your life. Yeah,
So we see people then self-sabotage here at this point because that limiting belief, right, becomes so powerful. And sometimes that belief, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. This is again, we don't want to leave our coaching to get into therapy.
right.
But so sometimes that limiting belief is an issue. I mean, is reinforced sometimes too by the people that are around us, right? And those people say, "Oh, I didn't know you were going to start trying to do that. Like, are you sure?" Right? So we can also get somebody to co-sign for that limiting belief. That's somebody who actually cares about us, right? And who loves us. And
Yeah,
so, could you speak to that for just a moment? Like, how would you break that if somebody has a sibling or a parent or a best friend that they've had for years who's like, "Oh, Mark, I really, man, you're gonna do that?" Like, and they're like, I just would have never imagined you
yeah,
doing that. Like, how would they keep their drive, their vision, their mission, their dream alive
yeah,
in that space?
yeah. Well, part of the transformation process is becoming who you were always meant to be.
Mm,
And I'm certified in the neuroscience of change,
mm.
and you can't walk out of an old story until you write a new one. And so
Wow.
it's like the monkey bars on the jungle gym, right? You didn't let go of that old one until you took hold of the new one, right? So we do the work of helping them embrace the new, and then we just expose the people who, for even good reasons, are trying to keep them in the old. Now, in my world, we call that the status quo.
Hmm.
Status quo education system, status quo family dynamics, status quo religion, status quo government and culture, right? Oh, we don't do that. That's not for us. And even these kind of questions, who do you think you are? Now,
Mm.
what the people don't realize that they're doing is they are struggling with the fact that we are setting ourselves to do something that they've even wanted, but they've accepted the rules of their status quo system that says, oh no, we're Jacksons. We don't do that.
We don't do that.
We're Irish. We're black folks. We don't do it. We're Pentecost denominations. What? We're Americans. We don't do that, right? And so people sometimes they're trying to protect us from that same failure and disappointment.
So
Sometimes
good.
we are provoking their own dreams and desires and
Mm.
their fear of going forward. So they would rather us get back into that limitation where we belong, quote unquote, so that they feel better.
Wow.
We have to help our client just recognize where that comes from
Yeah.
and then to decide what will it cost me to embrace that limitation.
Mm.
It'll cost me everything I really want.
Mm.
And then to say, how do we thank and appreciate them for that perspective? And then more ourselves than them, reassure ourselves, but I'm going forward anyway. Now,
Yeah.
we might lose them along the way. When we break the rules of the status quo, they kick us
Mm.
out of the club. I've got a colleague, and
So good.
when she was no longer Baptist, her grandma cried. And we're talking a little bit about faith before. You're going to go to hell. You're not going to make it to heaven. You're not Baptist.
Right.
So, this status quo belief that only being this is qualified. So, so we have to break allegiances, and then the people start threatening us. Well, you just you're going against everything. You're going against blah blah blah, and we don't want anything to do with you. Stop getting invited places. They stop having you around because you keep talking dreams. You keep talking about this stuff, right? And so it can be a lonely wilderness experience to leave that old status quo because they don't like you anymore. They don't appreciate you anymore.
Mm.
So you've got to connect with people who have done it before you, the first to get their diploma, the
Mm.
first to go on and get an education. You got to connect with people who know what it's like to be kicked out of the old club because
Mm.
you dare different. And then you got to listen to them because they keep pulling you in that direction. Come on, you can do it. They read your mail. Hey, have they called you goody two shoes yet? Have they asked you, who do you think you are? Yeah, how'd you know? I got those same accusations and questions of the come on, just keep coming. We've got
Yeah.
so you got to help your client understand but disconnect with the old and the limitation,
Hmm.
especially by forming and connecting their internal picture of their next and with people who know what it's like to get there.
Wow. Okay. This was even more than I signed up for, y'all. Mark has just really, I pray that whoever is listening to this right now, what you are being given is some insight into stuff that, again, people pay for. So I do not take any of this lightly that I have Mark here. This is so helpful, Mark, because dreams then um, cause separation, right? Sometimes even from people that you care about. So I hope that you all hear that and that care about you, like genuinely. I love this. You said a couple of things. You said something earlier. You said, um, basically whenever you get uh um that dream, right? Limiting beliefs show up when a goal is has arrived as well. So
Yeah.
you're there, and now that limiting belief starts to speak to you on this other end over here. It says when you break the rules of the
Yeah.
status quo.
Yeah.
This was so good. When you break the rules of the status quo, you get kicked out of the club.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to tell you why I think this is so profound and hopefully weighty for a lot of you, because it's in that moment where you want to give up. But
Yes.
like Mark said, also, as coaches, we stand in your future and call you to it. We're
Yeah.
there, we're in front of you, we're continuing to call you into who you want to be. And I love this too, Mark. I'm reading a book right now. I'm reading this book that has just blown my mind. I'm not getting paid, folks, for this. I don't know Mr. David Brooks, but I'm reading this book right here, right now, called The Road to Character by David Brooks. This book has literally started me down another transformation. What Mark just told you is the reason why I got into this. I broke so many norms.
Mm.
Mark, I'm just going to give a personal story briefly. I broke so many norms, Mark, in my life, from growing up in poverty, growing up in a broken home, and being told it, well, this is what you can be.
Yeah.
This is as far as you can go. Just get a job and do the best that you can.
Yeah.
Um, this is what your life is going to be. And it's so interesting. This really resonated with me. Bless my grandmother, bless her soul. My grandmother is from South Texas, and grew up in the church called the Church of God and the Pillar of the Ground of Truth. And that was how she lived her life, except for when she moved to Arizona. She started going to a Baptist church, a missionary Baptist church, and that's the church that I was raised up in.
Uh-huh.
And when I left this denomination, Mark, when I left this denomination, I
Yeah.
remember the displeasure that my grandmother had with me over leaving. But she is like, well, you're going into all that with all them people, and they're kind of weird, and this, that, and the third. And it was interesting. I remember wrestling with maybe I'm about to miss it by making this move. Like I went through that whole thing because my true transformation and true connection to the Christian faith came on the heels of being with my grandmother at a time where I was in my lowest moment. I was 20, I was 19, 20. And um, it was her who was the support system. It was her who was there. And I felt like she felt like I was betraying her, but that I wasn't looking to go further in my own life.
Yeah.
And so I had to wrestle with that tension that existed there, um, that I wasn't sure of at that particular phase and stage of my life. I just knew that I was like, hey, I see more, there
Yeah.
is more. So I wanted more. And then I was like, is this the only place God exists? Is
Yeah.
this the only church that God existed? Is this the only place to exercise my faith at the level that I want to? And is this community the only community that I have to stay in order for me to be relevant? In
Yeah.
order for my relationship, even with God, to be relevant. So I wrestled with a lot of those. So I'm saying this to say to somebody who watches this, who listens to this, I what Mark just said, I pray
Mm.
you have no idea, Mark. That was so profound. I pray that this blesses you beyond measure and starts you on the pathway to say, well, wait a minute. I never even thought about coaching, but what I just heard, what
Yeah.
just came to me is the thing that I've been stuck here. So I have this dream and I want to do it, but I'm afraid of the people that are around me that are holding me, right? Crab in the barrel. They're holding me hostage because of the threat of the relationship no longer being what it is.
Absolutely. And now, when we get to understand the four basic needs of humanity, any culture, any place, any undiscovered tribe anywhere in the world, the four basic things that every human being was born for: unconditional love, safety. I'm going to skip over number three. Number four is significance. Number three is belonging.
Mm,
We were made to crave unconditional love, safety, belonging, and acceptance. So when this tribe kicks us out or threatens to kick us out,
mm.
our need for belonging can threaten our need for expansion, growth, and flight.
Oof.
And where's my scissors at? I don't know if my scissors are here. Here's what we've got to do. I don't know if my scissors. We have to sever so that we can soar.
Ooh,
You can you can
man.
you can start soaring if you're an airplane. I don't care how much speed and momentum. If that airplane is chained to something on the ground,
Mm,
no matter when it gets lift off, it's going to come crashing back down to the ground. So before we can truly soar, we have to sever. And it takes an act of bravery because that sense of belonging is going to be challenged when we have the daring to sever, and we're almost kicking ourselves out of the club. Now that's an act of power.
that is an act. I believe, Mark, that this is the place where I believe most people walk away. I believe this is the place where most people quit. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that they might enter into this process, and this is the place where someone says, "Well, I don't see you this way. Like I don't." And it's interesting because we can almost do this to ourselves. So, story, folks, from the scripture, God tells the people of God to go and spy out this land, and they go to spy out this land. And when they go to spy out the land, they see giants in the land. And it's interesting, this story. I was just talking to somebody yesterday about this very story. They go and they see these giants in the land. And upon seeing these giants, they bring back the report that not only are there giants in the land, but listen to this. They say to themselves, we
Yeah,
are as grasshoppers in their sight. Now, here's what I want you to understand, the reason why I'm telling you the story, which aligns with what Mark was saying. They didn't have, or at least the text does not say, they had a conversation with these giants in the land. They just came back with a report about how they saw themselves and
mm-hmm.
how they believed that these people would see them as grasshoppers. In other words, nothing, something that they could crush. There
Yeah,
was only one person who was with them, whose name was Caleb. And Caleb said to them, "No, we have been told to go here. So, because we have been told to go here, I'm paraphrasing for those of you who don't share our faith, but they were told, and for those of you who do, he said, we've got a word from God that this belongs to us, and it doesn't matter what's in front of us.
right.
What matters is what was told to us. So a lot of this, Mark, I'm alluding to then, has to be this change, this courage, this grit, this fight, this tenacity, this dream has to be, correct me if I'm wrong and add to it, if however you'd like to, that has to be connected to the true identity that you're wanting to release and come forward, correct?
Absolutely. Now, when you go back and read it, if anybody wants to read that story, you can read it. Here was what they were told by God through Moses:
Mm-hmm.
go and spy out the land, whether it be good. What did what
Yes.
did the fruit look like? What about the houses to live in? What about
Yeah.
the land? That was what they were told.
Yeah.
That's what Moses was told to tell them to go and look for. when Moses gives them command, Moses is the one who adds and spy out the people.
Mm,
They be many or few. So that wasn't the original order, wasn't
mm,
look what you're up against. It was look what I have for you.
mm.
Our humanity is where we add, let's look at the obstacles. Now, watch what happens when you see obstacles. If you play football, you know this. You're a defensive end. They're running a sweep. Quarterback Pat pitches it to the running back, and you, if you were taught to block your man, you run into your obstacle, and while y'all are in a tug of war, your target runs past you and escapes you. When you're trained to see your target, your objective, doesn't matter the obstacle, you actually don't hit your obstacle. So here's the principle. When you see your obstacle, you hit your obstacle. When you see your goal, you plow through your obstacle.
Mm.
And if you've ever seen an offensive guy get trucked by a defensive line, a linebacker, and they
Right,
say, man,
right.
how did you knock that guy? What guy? The guy you knocked over. I hit somebody.
Mm.
I wasn't focused on what was in front of me. I was focused on what I was after.
Man.
And Caleb was so focused on what God had for them, he wasn't focused on the obstacle at all.
Mm.
In fact, 40 years later,
Right.
stands up at 85 years old. First of all, I ain't gonna fight no old man. Okay. And he says this, I don't think it was just bloviating. He says, I'm as strong now as I was then. Give me this mountain. And here's what
Yes.
I believe this because of the neuroscience of change, how it transforms us. I believe because Caleb never left the target. He never left what he knew he could have. I believe he literally was commanding his body to maintain and preserve strength
Yeah.
because he knew. So I don't think he was just talking trash. I think he
Yeah.
was literally as strong at 85 as he was at 45 because he stayed connected to the target
Yeah.
and didn't succumb to the perceived obstacles. And really, he's saying these obstacles are toast. We are going to annihilate them because this is ours. Let's go right now.
Right.
So when we get that kind of perspective on the goal, the outcome, and here's how we do it with our clients as coaches. What happens when you reach this goal?
Mm.
And you get clients that'll laugh, you got clients that'll cry. Oh, man, I won't be able to stand myself. This would be
Right.
this would mean everything to me. This would mean
Mm.
everything to my family. I would be so proud of myself. I would finally be able to blah blah blah. I would pay for the whole family to go on vacation, build
Right.
this home, or launch a ministry or a service, a business. I'd finish the book. And so when you can connect people to the target, then they don't perceive the obstacles as anything more than a speed bump and a growth opportunity on
Mm-hmm.
their way to success and victory.
Mm. So good. Two other things come to mind really quickly, and then I have a couple of other questions for you. Joseph,
Mm,
dream is a dream, the Bible says in
yeah,
Genesis. And if you know the story, Joseph didn't dream what would happen to him for a dream that actually wasn't his dream. It was a dream that God gave him.
right.
But Joseph dreams this dream, and in this dream, he never sees what the journey to where God wants to take him looks like. But we never see Joseph complain either, Mark. There's no reference in the text of Joseph complaining about the imprisonment, about being lied on, about any of those things. In fact, the scripture goes on to tell us that God favored him in all of these scenarios and situations that he was in.
Yeah.
And when he had an opportunity, in the end, Genesis 50:20, which a lot of people love to quote, when he had an opportunity to do it, even prior to Genesis 50:20, his family who had sold him off in this process, left him for dead.
Talk about being kicked out of the club.
Talk about being kicked out of the club for
And not
having a
only,
dream.
not only did they kick him out, they thought about killing him for his dream.
100%.
So that's the ultimate getting kicked out of the club. Continue, sir.
And no, he says to them, Mark, though, too, right? Hey, what you meant for evil, really God is on orchestrating this. And then he tells them prior to that statement, he says, I'm not trying to get even with you because I'm in the place of God. In other words, I'm where God wanted me to be. So you were actually the tool
Yes.
to get me here. Your actions back then were the tool. It was the part that got the ball rolling for me. I just didn't know that this is how God was going to do it. So now I'm where I'm supposed to be. And so you're right. Talk about getting kicked out of the club, right?
Yeah.
The second thought comes to mind when Paul says, that I have not obtained yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm pressing,
Yeah.
right? So these very words, these terms imply that there's pressure coming back his way.
Yeah.
And that part of the pressure is going to be his cultural understanding, his own understanding, right? And the desire to move forward. But he puts something in here, Mark, that I think is really sticks out to me, is very important. Paul says that he's pressing to take hold of what got a hold of him.
Yes.
So he's the dream, the vision that he has. He says, something informed me. Now, again, this is for those of you who don't know
Right.
scripture, and for those of us who do, you understand what I'm saying. He's talking about God and what God's purpose and plan is. But he says, something has informed me that there's something beyond here. He says, so I'm pressing toward this mark. But before he says it, he says, I'm forgetting those things
Yeah.
which are behind me, right? And he's talking about a lot of the stuff that he had learned because we're talking about an incredibly educated man, well educated, right? In philosophy,
Yes.
right? In religion, different things along those lines. Paul was highly intellectual, very intelligent.
Yeah.
So he speaks to Mark about going forward. He speaks to, and these two stories stick out to me about this. And this is again, Mark, this was the impetus for me because I was saying, I see these things in the text.
Yeah.
I want to translate them to people who want to be discipled, who want to develop, who want to grow, who want to be coached into the destiny and the thing that they genuinely believe they're supposed to have obtained in their lives.
Yeah. So Saint Irenaeus said it this way. Said the glory of God is man fully alive.
Mm. Wow.
So so so
Wow.
when we understand that the goal is more in us than it is in front of us.
Love it.
And we are called to release with reckless abandon everything we were called to be in life.
Yeah.
And in some of our religious paradigms, we see the glory as being shiny or some light, some halo effect of light, when the true way we release glory in the earth is when we live fully alive. When there's something attractive about us
Mm.
because we're done succumbing to limitations. We're done. Uh, we talked about going backwards, looking at issues. They are factors, but we're called to live beyond those factors.
Yeah.
And if we don't, we'll use the factors as excuses. Well, I would have been this if that wouldn't have happened.
Oh.
Well, if I wouldn't have done this with my life. And so they are factors, but they were always meant to not only be overcome, to
Mm.
be richly part of what's building us toward who we were always meant to be. See, I'm just a redeemed hot mess.
Right,
And
right, right, right.
I had to be that messy. I had to be that far gone.
Yeah.
And that's just as much a part of my story as the one who rescued me from it. And so, that being said, to just be electrified with passion, gifts, purpose,
Mm,
potential, all coming into alignment, it doesn't mean mountains lay down and doors swing open.
right.
It just means that we navigate them to release who we were always meant to be.
Mm,
And and that's what happened with Joseph. And he recognized every single one of these phases was necessary because I couldn't get to the fulfillment of it until it was time. And when that happened, I was ready because of
mm,
everything I endured, suffered, and overcame
hmm.
in order to still be ready, to still be in a position, and to be aligned internally so that I could be assigned externally.
This is so good. I got to squeeze in these two questions so
Sure.
before we wrap up. So powerful. I hope you guys take notes and you're catching this again. You'll get it. So go back and re-listen to it. If there's a part you're like, hey, hit that 30 second, rewind, go back and grab this stuff. This is the beautiful thing about being able to uh take information and grow from there. Let me share this question with you here, Mark. These last two questions here. Um, I want to talk to you about mindset shifts. Okay. So, like in your experience, what kind of mindset shifts have you seen with the people that you have worked for? Can you give us what you see that takes place with people in this space?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I read the question, I thought mindset, and then I thought belief set. So our human mind gets hardwired because of the habits. What's the definition of an attitude? It is a habit of thought tied to an emotion.
Mm,
And our thoughts, often repetitive, become nerve endings that fire together, wire together. So we end up with this operating system, whether we want it to operate the way it does or not, it does. And it keeps us stuck. And this is where the repetitive habits create the attitudes. I mean, we're coming up on Thanksgiving, right?
right.
And we're gonna walk in the house, happy Thanksgiving. It's like, why you got an attitude? There's something in the repetition of thoughts tied to emotion. These people
Right.
get on my nerves, or these are the people that harmed me.
Right.
These are the people that turned on me. This is the house where I was brutalized or neglected or whatever. So this habit of thought tied to an emotion. So those nerve endings that fire together wire together, and it doesn't change until we cause our mindsets, our thought patterns to fire in the direction we want them to function enough times that they wire together.
I love
Now,
it.
when we can perceive our best and greatest self on a deep subconscious level
Mm,
and connected to our five senses, we're depositing truth in our subconscious. So, this is how we leave the mindset: I'm not enough. I don't matter. I have no worth. Two, I am enough. I matter. I am filled with worth. We can wrap our brain around it and do nothing with it until we ingest it into our bone marrow
yeah.
through our five senses. Now, we do that by, what does it look like, smell like, taste like,
Mm,
sound like? To live, I am filled with worth. I matter. I am enough. And we deposit it into our subconscious through the five senses because it actually, the lies got deposited through our five senses.
Right.
When we
It's
do
good.
that, we feel it on that deep subconscious level. We're just firing those thought patterns together, connected with our emotions, that then become hardwired together.
Mm,
What used to be natural and commonplace now is foreign. What I never thought I would believe or pursue becomes the new normal.
mm.
And
Wow.
I wash my hands. Here's how it happens.
Wow.
Are you watching? Watch.
Got you.
It doesn't happen like this
Got you.
over. It's just this. So I got
Mm,
a question for your audience here. Just this. And you do it again. And you do it again. And you go. Then you're 30% believing the truth about you, 70% believing the lies. What would happen in your life if you believe those lies 30% less and the truth about you 30% more, 60-40, 50-50, then 60-40 the other way? More times than not, you are supporting yourself, believing in yourself,
yeah.
in your corner instead of being your number one worst enemy.
Yeah.
60-40, 70-30, 95-5. This new muscle becomes the normal belief pattern, sense of identity, strong sense of self, ability to sustain purposeful endurance to reach your goal. And 5% of the time, that old thought pattern comes around, but it's weird to you now. You're like, I
Right.
can't believe I used to believe that. I just can't believe I used to think that way and see that way.
Right.
And so it happens in that kind of ways where now this isn't just some thoughts of dreams I'm having, it's a mindset. I've always said this: wealth begins in the mind before it begins in the wallet.
Amen to
So
that.
success is a belief before it is an accomplishment.
Mm, that's so rich. I love everything he said. This last part. And for those of you who are thinking just wealth only in the wallet, Mark, hopefully it's acceptable for me to borrow from that. Like this book that I love called Borrowing Brilliance. I want to borrow from that and tell you that even your additional wealth that you're going to get has to start here and not
Yeah.
somewhere else. It's got to start in your mind. I believe that. Let me ask you this final question here. Mark and I have to have a session number two here because there is so much that I think is powerful here. The second question and final question that we're going to have today, and then I want everybody to know how to contact you and connect with you as well. What elements of life coaching, in your opinion, make it especially effective for personal growth?
Wow. Man, thank you. I get to talk about the favorite thing you and I give a client: unconditional positive regard.
Mm,
That's not unconditional agreement. We don't have to agree with where somebody is or
that's
even
really good.
some, but to just sit with a client with unconditional positive regard, which is a knowledge and belief in their true identity, potential, and worth. And my friend, we might be the first or only person in their life that gives them this: an unconditional positive regard. And many clients, they just, that's refreshing to them.
Right.
They've never sat in a place where they could talk about life issues without judgment,
Mm,
without pressure of other people's you should tos and need tos and gotta
yeah.
do's,
Yeah.
which are all steeped in you are insufficient. And I don't really believe you can accomplish this. They get so much of that in the spaces that they operate. The coach might be the first person in a long time or the only person ever who just gives them unconditional positive regard.
Yeah.
And the other side of that is, um, someone whose authenticity is, I have to serve you by holding you accountable to these truths and holding you to what you have defined as the outcome that would mean everything to you, right?
Absolutely.
And it means we say sometimes, but mostly ask questions. And once your clients kind of get into the rhythm of working with you, you ask the questions. And I've had this happen. The client goes, oh, I knew you were going to ask me that.
Right.
And I don't like that you asked me that. I said, yes, I get to cut you like that. And then you have to pay me. It's like, wait, I'm paying you
Right.
to slice me?
Right. Right.
Yes, you are. Because you needed somebody to care enough to provoke. If you notice, Jesus provoked so much by asking questions.
100%.
More than what he
100%.
said, it was so much of what he asked. And so we ask the questions people have needed to be asked, not so we can tell them the answer, so
Correct.
that they can answer it within their own heart and expose everything contrary to their true identity and true potential. So that's
Absolutely.
the benefit of effective life coaching.
Yeah.
And what's the percentage? When people hear an idea, they're 5% likely to execute it and achieve success.
Just
Then there's
5%.
just 5%. Then there's graduating percentages if they write it down, if they
Okay.
make a decision. But the likelihood of reaching a goal jumps to 95% when a person has a specific appointment with a person to whom they are accountable, such as
Boom.
a life coach.
Boom.
To your audience and anybody, if you really wanted, the number one thing you could do is hire a life coach or connect with somebody you know will not help you stay in the excuses, but hold you accountable and help
Yeah.
you raise your awareness and navigate how to get there. Now,
Yeah.
most people don't even want to start, Demetrius, because they like, this is what I just don't know how. And my
Right.
favorite thing to say to them is, well, how will take care of itself.
Absolutely.
Just picture what happens when it happens.
Right.
And I close your eyes. What happened? You wake up tomorrow and you've accomplished this goal. What
Mm.
would that mean to you? People start crying. I start crying. They start defining it, and they're electrified with the passion and the belief. And then, literally, the human brain starts creating new protein, new, literally physical neural pathways,
Wow.
cellular protein to fire in that direction. And if we keep it going, to wire in that direction. So we're
Mm.
literally changing our mind to change our brain to change our life.
Wow. Change our mind to change your brain to change your life.
Yeah.
Once again, always making these parallels for me, right? Have this mind in you,
Yes.
right?
Which was all
Um,
in
which was
Christ.
also in Christ Jesus, right?
Yeah.
All these things speak so closely connected again with the faith that we share
Yeah.
and
And be ye transformed by the renewal
renewing.
of your mind. When you want different, you've got to think different. Yeah.
We're gonna wrap up here, Mark. I'm gonna share this piece, and then I want you to tell people how to reach you, get in contact with you.
Yes, sir.
I am a full blown, full stop, 100% result of exposure to opportunity and then stepping into the opportunity, taking the opportunity, failing in the opportunity, succeeding in the opportunity, getting back up in the opportunity, and
Mm-hmm.
then moving forward through it. I'm a result of that because it wasn't about how smart I was.
Mm-hmm.
It was about what's in front of me. And if it was given to me, then that means if it's in front of me, then that means that at some point I have access to it. And to access it is going to mean that I need to fully engage what it is. And I had to overcome fear. I
Yeah.
had to overcome the obstacles. I had to overcome my own limiting beliefs. I had to overcome the voices that I hear in my head, whether it came from my grandmother saying, yeah, I don't know about this, or other
Right.
people telling me that my culture or
Mm.
my education was a hindrance or a lack to getting somewhere or doing something. And I am a result of doing just that, of saying this is how I get here. And so I hope today that whoever listens to this, do me a favor. I was gonna put this on my paid page. I'm probably not. Um, and I'm gonna give this to folks for free. Share this
Yeah.
with other people. Just grab it and share it. Just put it in other people's hands. They're going to just offer the small things that Mark shared today here in 58 minutes is going to bless your life, is going to change your life, is going to give you the ability to start to know to go forward. And so, Mark, this is what I want to do. First and foremost, I want to thank you. I mean, more than you will know, man. Like you said, this has been a long time coming for us, for me, just to be able to have you on to get together, man. And this is my passion now. This is my passion thing. This is what I do, and it's working with people. It's watching people, like you said, hit those aha moments, come to that place in their
Yeah.
lives and grow and develop. And it's just it's a powerful thing. Um, thank you, man. Thank you so much for coming and sharing. And seriously, I mean this with everything. We legitimately have to do this again because there's so much more meat that's
Yeah.
left on this bone that I think that people can glean from and say, I really need to consider this process of getting coached, of having someone in my corner,
Yeah.
who's going to help me achieve what I believe I was meant to achieve and to do. So thank you so much. So profound, so articulate, so well in your delivery of these things and the explanation of these things, just so that people can grab hold of these principles and be able to, again, really reconsider whether or not they just don't have it. And finally, I just want to say this to everybody too, and I'll let Mark tell you how to get a hold of him in all various different ways. But he said something that I needed to reiterate, and I wrote down: you're enough, and you just have to know that you're enough. Psalm 139 says this: whether you practice our faith or not, that you are fearfully and wonderfully made.
Yeah.
And you have to know that you were created for something much more, right? And in doing so, that there's so much for you to experience and for you to live. You don't have to live stuck. You don't have to live with no all the time. You don't have to live in fear and this self-built prison of saying, well, what will people think of me? I got
Right.
a secret for you.
Mm.
They already think something about you, and it's
Yes.
really none of your business. The question
Absolutely.
is what do you think about who you are and where you're trying to go? That's the deeper, more important question. And if you can answer that through coaching and have somebody journey with you, you'll be better off. And I will say this to you: the people that are connected to you in your life, a spouse, your children, your grandchildren, your coworkers, your neighbors, if you're on a school board, if you're on a steering committee of any kind, they too are going to benefit from you, because when we do well, we give other people permission to do well just by
Yeah.
doing well. So
Yeah.
with that being said, Mark, can you tell everybody how they can connect with you, get a hold of you? And if you do anything virtual where they can pay, hop in, whatever it is that you have available to people, can you share with them how to get a hold of you?
Sure. Absolutely. So directly, you can reach me at Mark, MARC, at forwardleading.llc. MARC, Mark at forwardleading.llc. You can follow me on social media at FWD LEADING, forward leading, at FWD leading is the all the social media stuff. And on my website, forwardleading.llc, as well as there's an access point. I've got to get it from my marketing person, but it'll be on my website soon, which is the first 6 weeks of transformation that I experienced. I now provide that digitally through pre recorded sessions and homework assignments,
Awesome.
reading assignments and homework assignments that you can access to start your journey of 6 weeks of transformation. So that's the way you get a hold of me. And you said something so profound, Demetrius, and it reminded me of what we talked about, that number one limiting belief is fear of greatness, and what Marianne Williamson said about it. She said,
Mm,
our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure.
mm,
And then she said this, it's our light, not our darkness, that scares us the most.
Ooh.
And she said, we ask ourselves, here's some more limiting beliefs. Who am I to be brilliant, to be
Mm,
gorgeous, to be talented, to be fabulous? Then here comes the confrontation. She says, actually, who are you not to be?
mm,
You are a child of God. Then she says, your playing small does not serve the world.
mm,
There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. Then she goes on to just say more things about just shining your light. So we are created. That's a poem by Marianne Williamson called Our Deepest Fear. You can find it anywhere.
yeah.
And you can get it 4 feet tall, 3 feet wide. You can print it up this small and put it on
Yeah.
your mirror. So ultimately, it's really about unlocking. And one of the ways I like to say it is when you stop needing people's permission and you stop apologizing for being who God created you to be, who you were always meant to be,
Man.
living, when you stop apologizing for living fully alive,
Mm.
um, you become dangerous and contagious in
And
an
contagious.
in an amazing way. And so I did not dare invite myself back, but about 30 minutes ago, I was like, "Yeah, we're gonna have to do this again."
We have to do it
Yeah,
again. We absolutely have to do it again for sure. I
yeah,
mean, you always are welcome. I circle back. I have guests on all the time, couple of times a year. So, especially when I get feedback from people, they're like, "Hey, that person," I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely. Let's get them back on." Listen, folks, thank you so much again for hanging with us here today on the Deeper Podcast. Again, my whole focus is to go past what we see and to have conversations like I did today with people just like Coach Mark, right? Who have the ability to help you see in places maybe that you haven't been able to see in before. So deeper is about that. So we don't shy away from issues, struggles, whatever they may be, hard conversations. They're deeper conversations. They're past the surface. Why? Because I believe that when we have deeper conversations, that we actually have the opportunity to confront ourselves with things perhaps that we inherited from our lives growing up and other scenarios along those lines. But you can break those things today. My program that I have is called Habits, Appetites, and Decisions. I believe these three things are the most important things you can do. If you have good habits, it's going to lead to good appetites, which ultimately will lead to you having good decisions. All you have to do is reverse that, and you can come up with the outcome. It's not going to work out for you the way that you want it to work out. Also, if you want to connect more with my ministry page, you can go to the dig. That's the digg.org. There you can find me doing more teaching on soteriology, also biblical apologetics, where I try to break down why we believe what we believe. And it's argumentative, but not in the way that you would think of an argument. It's me talking to you about things that when people say, "What about this?" I bring that into a space where you can look at that and say, "Oh, okay, well, I never considered that or I never knew that." And so I'd love for you to connect with me there. You can also catch me on both of those. You can catch my TikTok, which is Habits, Appetites, and Decisions. Also, my podcast, which is the Deeper Podcast. And
Yeah.
then you can also catch me on Instagram on Habits, Appetites, and Decisions as well. So super excited to have you guys here today. Listen, go and be great and begin to discover everything that lives on the inside of you that was meant to be expressed outside of you. I appreciate you.